You could have one JBL extremely priced 3, or you could have 2 Minirig Mark 3s, or you could have 1 Minirig Mark 3 and 1 Mark 3 subwoofer. What you're going to do, all combinations add up to about £280, probably the same in dollars. What's your best bet? The thing about the Minirigs is every speaker's made in China, almost every speaker's made in China, but oh, it's the Minirig. They're made in the UK. You may just want something not made in the UK. Minirigs, long been my favourite for what I would call a little bit of a high-end listen, a little bit of a more sophisticated listen, if you got the full system. Full system is 2.2. They bundle the Mark IIIs with one subwoofer as a 2.1 system. I still don't know why they do that. I still don't know why they don't bundle 2.2, because you've got 2, it's stereo, you want a bit more bass, you hook up a subwoofer, you're thinking that's a full system, but no. Once you've got the 2 Mark IIIs in stereo, and then you hook up the sub, that's only going to play the left or right channel, depending on which is master and slave. The master will be left, and that's the point here. For full left-right separation, you're going to need a 2.2 system. However, what I love about the Minirig system is not because, oh, this speaker sounds great and that speaker sounds great. It's the combination of, well, you can start with one Mark III, you can start with a Mini, but you can build up to a full system. You are paying a little bit over the odds for what I would price one of the individual speakers for a modular system, not just a modular system. We talked about the Sonos Roam. Yeah, but you pay a bit more because the guts, it's like almost like having a computer on your head. Well, you pay more also because it's not just a speaker with the Minirigs. For a start, we do have a barrel charger. We'd like USB-C, but they're sticking with the barrel charger for now. They're dropping auxiliary inputs left, right, and centre, but we've got 2, not just an in or an out. It's an in and an out. It's an in and an out. So I can hook up, play my Mark III. I could have a line out to 2 other speakers. It could be 2 other subs. They would all play happily. The out is the full signal. It's the full frequency range. But you can daisy chain them all. You're going to get the same on your sub, and you can start daisy chaining. A lot of you say, what's it like using an auxiliary on a Bluetooth speaker? You can remember, Minirig grew up as an auxiliary only. It's not an afterthought, and it's not just to put on the feature list. These are high quality. You will get a better sound using auxiliary on the Minirig Mark IIIs. But the point of this video is, you've got 280 quid to spend. Yeah, mate, we'll keep making this JBL extremely priced, and you keep telling us, oh, the Mark IIIs are worth it, because you can build up to a full system and you can do loads and loads of other things. So the main question here is, stereo, a mono but with the sub, or a JBL Xtreme 3. But here's the point, even if you have the sub and the Mark III, in terms of weight, it's still less than the 2 kilos, the JBL Xtreme 3, 550 grams for the Mark III, 875 grams for the subwoofer. That's around 1,500, about 1.5 kilos. It's still lighter. Yes, it's a little bit awkward. Thing about using these in stereo, it can be a bit hit and miss. It can be a bit fiddly. Personally, on the latest firmware, using the Mark IIIs, I find it fine now. I can always get them quite easily into stereo using the app. The stereo lock sometimes works, sometimes doesn't. But there was a time I couldn't be sure I could even get them in stereo. I can be sure now. It is worth mentioning, we talk about codecs. Does it make a lot of difference or not? It's going to make to my ears, it makes a difference if you're playing a decent track. Obviously, if the track is not encoded to a high bit rate, or if it's a crap, it's badly recorded, it's not going to make much difference. But more information will go over aptX. And I'm saying over aptX because Minirig have given us, made in the UK, they've given us aptX. You're on SBC. I'm told this goes to AAC on Apple, but other people say it doesn't. I'm just putting it out there. I am sticking with Android. I haven't got any iOS devices, so I can't tell you one way or the other. And again, not just 280. These are all 40 watts. So that's rated, we think, 40 watts. But if you plug in the mains lead, it's the 50 watts that they advertise. But if it's on battery only, we think it's 40 watts. That's a 40 rated a 40 watt speaker. That's rated a 40 watt speaker. So you're thinking, oh, well, that's 80 watts versus 40 watts to go twice as loud. Well, it doesn't go twice as loud. First of all, that's 40 watts to a subwoofer. The bass, we know, requires a lot more power to obtain the volume. If you don't have bass, like you just have a Mark III, it's going to go louder because it only has to push the highs. So it's not like having 80 against 40, because that's just a subwoofer. It's going to be not, you know, it's the equivalent, maybe 20 watts. Maybe we're talking 50, 60 watts. So we're still maybe expecting it to go louder. But what does louder mean? Yeah, well, turns if because our ears more sensitive to the highs in terms of loudness than they are to the bass. You can measure the bass being a lot louder, but to your ears, probably wouldn't seem as loud as a really high shrieked, high piercing sound. But I digress. Let's get on with the video. 50% comparison. So stereo, mono but plus the sub, JBL Xtreme Price 3.
I don't wanna say anything, cause if I do, I might say the wrong words. Oh no. So I'll keep my mouth shut and not listen. Afraid I'll lose you if I didn't. Till we find what we're missing and compromise. So I'll keep my shoes on and not leaving. We're on thin ice, winter season. Can we find a single reason not to say goodbye? Don't know what to do anymore. I'm out of options, nothing's working. I'm out of service. Come help me now, I'm fucking nervous. I'm trying but can't scratch the surface. So I'll keep my mouth shut and not listen. Afraid I'll lose you if I didn't. Till we find what we're missing and compromise. So I'll keep my shoes on and not leaving. We're on thin ice, winter season. Can we find a single reason not to say goodbye? Oh, if I said what's on my mind, would you stay with me tonight? If I said what's on my mind, would that make you run and hide? Run and hide. Run and hide. If I said what's on my mind, would that make you run and hide? Would that make you run and hide?
First of all, I'm going to point out I'm recording the Mark IIIs at 45 degrees. So you could listen on axis, you can listen how they're clearly designed to be listened, taking advantage of a flat surface to enhance the bass, but then your highs are quite rolled off because you're listening off axis, but they adjust to that by having the highs a little bit more than they really want. Now, here's the thing. I find the Mark IIIs a bit clinical on their own. So clearly I wouldn't listen on axis Mark III, no. But when I balance that with a sub, I personally listen on axis. I find that's warm enough now, and I can get the extra clarity of having it on axis. For these recordings, to make it easy to try to take in all listening scenarios, I'm recording at 45 degrees. Bear in mind, if you have that on axis, it's going to sound a little bit sharper, a little bit clearer to your ears, but probably over sharper, over clear, because that's how it's tuned. The other thing is, all scenarios here are a little bit different, quite different in their sound signature. That makes loudness matching a little bit more difficult than normal. I like to balance them all at laughs. But of course, in the real world, you're not going and asking your mum, "Mum, what laughs am I on? I want to turn the volume up a bit more." What you're doing is you're adjusting it to your ears. Now, are you adjusting it to the vocals? Are you adjusting it to the bass? Are you adjusting the highs? It's going to differ between us all. So I'm trying to get it to what I think is to your ears where you would be adjusting the volume. Normally it's just on luffs, but the difference here is so much that I've had to do a little bit of extra jiggling. And it is interesting because one trick that is used when mixing tracks, when they want you to play it louder. Years ago we had loudness wars. It's a little bit different now. There's a lot of headroom for dynamic range. But still, some people would want you to play their tracks a little bit louder than others. And they reduce the vocals in the mix because they know for most people you will adjust the volume to get the vocals about right. And of course, if you've reduced the volume of the vocals, you're bringing up the bass, it's going to sound a bit more bass heavy. They play tricks like that. Not everybody will adjust to the vocals, but I'm saying I've got to try and take into account how you would adjust. And it's been more difficult probably on this one than on most of my videos. Just bear that in mind. At these volumes, sound signature really, really different. Stereo, you have them wide apart. That's lovely. They sound great. You get a nice shimmer. You get a nice sound stage. That's really nice. And it's a single driver. You're getting a nice clean stereo image. But what you're not getting is bass. When you hear it against other bass heavy options, the lack of bass extension on the Mark III becomes quite obvious at these lower volumes. When I hook up just one with the sub, the balance is a bit off. These subs tend to be punchy rather than warm. When I say tend to be, the Minirig subs are punchier rather than warm with deeper extension than you might expect as a standalone subwoofer. At low volumes, for my ears, the balance is not quite right. So it's going to come down to, do I want a bit more bass or a really nice, pleasant sound, but not quite got the bass? A lot of you don't need any bass at all. I personally need a nice warm sound, which comes with a decent bass extension. And while the highs are quite thin and nasally on the JBL Xtreme 3, it is my personal preference over the others in the JBL Xtreme range. It's going to come down to personal preference. I prefer this because it's got the deepest bass. JBL Xtreme 1 has the most upper bass, and the JBL Xtreme 2 has something in between. It's going to suit different tastes. For me, at these volumes, it's the winner, not the perfect speaker, but it has the best balance of bass, clarity, vocals. Bear in mind, in terms of actual stereo and soundstage, outright winners for the Mark IIIs as a stereo pair, but for me, lacking in the bass. So we're going to push it up around 80% volumes. That's pushing the volumes that for me, real world volumes, but for a lot of you, quite loud. But for me, it's going to, 80% is quite significant because it becomes a sweet spot. It seems to be a thing now in the Bluetooth speaker industry where 80%, yeah, well, that's where you can't have any more bass than that, but they'll let you have more mids and highs. Just if you want to, because having a party, you're outside. All right, we're going to go a bit more, a bit louder, but you won't be getting more bass. So sweet spot tends to be around 80, well, at 80%, no above. Sweet spot probably a little bit below that, but that's 80% is significant because that's the most bass.
One's a company, two's a crowd, three's a party coming, move around. Fresh when the school is out, when the booze is up, when the sun is down. Enjoy the ride, get some pillows in the Chevy. Hey, hey, it's like a ballet, loaded and heavy. Hey, take your time, let me know when you're ready. Hey, hey, couple months I've been messing with this steady. Open for plans tonight. Lost in the afterglow. Oh, girl, your love for me keeps calling me, so I'm calling you.
same old story. Stereo sounds nice, but lacks the bass weight. That's why I certainly prefer, for two reasons, with the sub at these volumes, 80%, around 80%. To me, it has the best balance of the speakers on this table. I prefer the warmth that I get with that to having them in stereo. But also, I know it's going to work every time I turn on my master speaker. I've only got to hook up the wired connection, and I know 1.1 works every time. Yes, now it does seem to work in stereo all the time, but the wireless lock doesn't work for me most of the time, and I still have to go into the app. That can be a nuisance. JBL Xtreme 3, it does go the deepest, and I already said, punchy rather than deep. So we do have more bass when we hook up the subwoofer. We've got more mid bass, we've got more upper bass. But in terms of actual deep bass extension, yes, that still goes to the JBL Xtreme 3, but the highs are a bit hard to handle really as you get to these higher volumes. It becomes a bit shrieky. It's already a bit thin, a bit nasally, because the peak is quite high up, well, right into the harmonics range. So it's not even a natural place to have a peak, but they do that. It's going to make it sound a bit more airy, but certainly more thinner and nasally. So it's a win in my money, in my terms, for the 1.1 system with the subwoofer. You may love stereo, you may not need any bass, you may have neighbours banging on your wall every night, and so bass is out of question, and then you're going to quite like the Mark IIIs. Yes, you've got more of a balance with the JBL Xtreme 3, and depending on really how tolerant your ears are, you will or will not handle the highs, they're not natural on here. They are quite shrieky, but I still prefer the extra clarity I get on the JBL Xtreme 3 compared to the other two JBL Xtremes. Outdoors, you're probably not going to be favouring the JBL Xtreme 3. So we've hooked up a separate sub. We're expecting massive things from it. What happens when we go to 80 watts now at maximum volume? Come on now, do the maximum volume test.
Keep running just to make it to the night. 'Cause your darkness makes me feel alive. Why can't I tell you what I mean? To show you what I see through the smoke and the lights. Calling somebody from my own is a feeling I don't own anymore. Honestly, gotta be losing my way, losing my way, losing my way. Come make me lost to me, what do you say? How can I love you if you pull away, you pull away, you pull away? I'm tired of being tongue-tied. I'm tired of being tongue-tied. I'm tired of being tongue-tied. I drove out to search for brighter skies. 'Cause I count on me, myself, and I. Why can't you tell me what you mean? Just show me what you see through the smoke and the lights. Calling somebody for my own is a feeling I don't own anymore. I've honestly gotta be losing my way, losing my way, losing my way. Come make me lost to me, what do you say? How can I love you if you pull away, you pull away, you pull away? I'm tired of being tongue-tied. I'm tired of being tongue-tied. I'm tired of being tongue-tied.
So, just tell me what goes the loudest. Oh, all right then, it's two Mark IIIs in stereo. But hey ho, sounds pretty awful, doesn't it, at maximum volume? Because there is no bass, zero bass. Well, there may be a little bit of upper bass. Technically, We've actually got 1 dB more upper bass than we've got on the JBL Xtreme 3, but that's your lot. It's then completely rolled off. By 50 hertz, it's near 20 decibels down on the other two. So to all intents and purposes, no bass. Makes it a shrieky, thin sound. But yes, you're outdoors, it will go the loudest, followed by the JBL Xtreme 3. And then we have another problem because it's really, really shrieky now. But hey ho, if you can handle the shriek, you've got some bass. You haven't got the most bass, but you've still got the deepest bass. But the most bass, for me, the winner again now, because it's got the best balance, is the 1.1 system. You hook up one Mark III to one subwoofer. It's still the same in money terms as the JBL Xtreme 3. That's a winner. But in pure technical terms, in terms of LUFS, it's not. It's the quietest of all the combinations on this table because we are less sensitive to bass. So we can have a lot of bass and then not declare it loud at all. So we are 2 decibels up overall bass on the JBL Xtreme 3, although it's 2 decibels behind in terms of actual deep bass, but that's because it has a significant amount of extra mid and upper bass over the JBL Xtreme 3. Depending on your ears and your tastes, you may or may not hear that difference. To me, it's big. This is a smoother, easier listen. The highs are still a bit rolled off. And when I say rolled off, they're not over. They're not over focused, as in a stereo pair or the JBL Xtreme 3. So, what was the point of the video? Just remind us, you got 280 quid or $280, maybe around $300, and all the other countries. I know a lot of you are watching me from the equivalents. Although sometimes the variance in prices does surprise me, but assuming that they are all about the same pricing combinations. Look, if I'm traveling, it's still going to be the easiest thing to have a JBL Xtreme 3. I'm probably not going to use it at maximum volumes. 60, 50% and below is going to be, for me, the best listen anyway. However, that's going to be 2 Mark IIIs in stereo. It's really nice. That's the only one, that's the only combination that's going to give you a decent sound stage. You're going to have some sort of hi-fi listen where you start picking out instruments and the like. But I personally need a bit more bass than that. I find that clinical and a bit cold on its own, but I do like it when I pair it with the sub. It adds some warmth, and I can also listen to it on axis, and it still sounds balanced. So, for me, it's a win for the sub and 1 Mark III. We know we're not getting hi-fi with the JBL Xtreme Price 3, but we're getting a fantastic logo. That may or may not be enough for you. For the fanboys, that's going to be more than enough. And of course, it's rugged, it's rubberized, it's going to be more travel friendly. But is it, Al? Because you've already told us it's actually heavier than if you had just a sub and 1 Mark III. And of course, 2 Mark IIIs with a fantastic stereo spread, even lighter. In fact, half the weight exactly of the JBL Xtreme 3. I'll leave it with you, what your takeaway is from this video. My own personal preference, which I do not say is what you should like, but my own personal preference is 1.1. I thank you for watching.
I ain't about that life. I ain't about that life. Ain't no project wife, got my logic right, cause I'm not your type. I ain't about that life. I ain't about that life. Sorry, ma, I ain't get it right. I'ma just live my life. I ain't about that. I ain't about that life.